one of the two people that I brought that, we gathered for this is my dear friend now. I hadn't met him before, but Jeffrey Nelson, who's a super creative, who had spent his career in Hollywood and, is a brand genius, everything like that. And he developed that phrase, the curiosity generation, because it's the only generation, or the first generation not defined by age.
Yeah.
And we all belong to it. That's what we found out in the podcast. The younger people did. We were all part of the curiosity generation. And maybe that's a key right there, is staying curious.
I love that.
Há quem veja o invisível, há quem faça o impossível. Depois de tudo, alguma coisa vem dizer que tudo bem.
Welcome to the Menopause Retro Journeys, a series where I get together with women from all walks of life and get to go and visit their menopause years. We talk about their stories, the ups and downs, and in particular, we go back and connect some dots, and we try to extract those gems and pockets of wisdom. And what would be really interesting to do is to find those new ways of being that emerge right after menopause and kind of set away new ways for the second half of our lives. This we do as a retro journey because usually when we're in it, it's a lot more difficult to see what's going on. And also looking back, it's easier to do some retrospection and see these things. I'm your host, Ioana Matsuli, the creator of the Menopause Codex. And today, my dear, dear guest is Eve Konstantine. And I will call her Evie. Eve, I'll see. So I will welcome Eve. I will tell you a little bit about Evie and her amazing background. It's a little bit longer than, because she's actually an elder, beloved elder. So she's in, how old are you now? You're like...
I'm 75.
75. So Eve Konstantine is a thought leader with the gift for seeing the arc of evolutionary patterns, their rhythms, processes, and implications. A naturally innovative thinker, Evie has lived her life on the cutting edge of change. So we're going to talk about change, as in menopause change as well. Her transformational work traces its true foundation to her in-depth study and training in yoga science and philosophy that began more than 4 decades ago, including studying at an ashram in India. Back in her early 30s, she was a very early teacher of meditation and yoga. There were not many yoga teachers at the time, I suppose. While in Minneapolis, she was a founding member of the Minnesota Waldorf School, the Meditation Center, and the Minnesota Women's Center, the first statewide project of its kind, advancing women's causes politically and socially. Then she went off to do a master's degree in public health, and at the same time became certified in various complementary healing modalities. She helped develop the first college-level program in complementary healing certification and created groundbreaking health education materials for corporate and all sorts of organizations. She co-founded the Healers Guild of Cincinnati and founded Rose Hill Healing Arts, an early holistic healing practice. She spent 2 decades in Washington, D.C. She's a former executive chairperson of the International Monetary Fund's Family Association and a White House volunteer. She worked in multinational programs enhancing intercultural awareness and competence, forwarding women's rights and empowerment, and supporting global sustainability issues. As a certified leadership coach, something that she did afterwards, Evie has spent the last 20 years of her life coaching executives on Wall Street, the UN, National Institutes of Health, World Bank, the NSA, and multinational corporations. She helped launch one of the first programs in the country, teaching executives the practice of conscious visioning. And talking about consciousness, she has been sitting on many not-for-profit boards, and she has served as the chairman of the board of the Source of Synergy Foundation. So this was like the initiative that created the Evolutionary Leaders Circle, to which she's also a member today, which was the first project of the Source of Synergy Foundation, evolutionary stuff. She's also co-creator of the Up Levels podcast. I want to talk about this as well. Co-founder of the Cosmas Barbatsis Institute. Member of the Sonophilia Foundation for Applied Creativity, and Advisory Council for WIN, a Women's International Conference. Currently, she's writing a book on, I love this, vibrational intelligence, the VQ, the quotients, right? A
Yes.
wonderful invitation to apprehend the highest octaves of our beingness. Evie divides her time between Santa Barbara, California, and Greece, the home of her fierce and courageous ancestors. She is the proud mother of 2 amazing adults living in Los Angeles and one wonderful grand dog. She loves dancing, and last but not least, is an Aikido black belt. Wow. Wow. So I really enjoyed looking at what you've done all those years, Evie. Is amazing. And what I love as well, we can talk about the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s.
And
It's amazing. Super, super nice.
oh my God.
Welcome.
Thank you, Johanna. Oh my God, that's like a life review listening to that.
It is.
And I never feel, I don't know what being 75 now even means. But when I hear that, I think, oh, that's what it means. You've lived a long time and you've done a lot of stuff. But beyond that, I think it means whatever we decide that it means, or doesn't mean.
Yeah. Well, it's a full life. You've really lived your life, and you still do. And I'd say I see 4 main areas: is health, consciousness, leadership, and creativity, where you have been focusing.
Right.
And it would be interesting, to see how this blends in with our theme of today, which is menopause. And maybe we start. Would you like to tell us a little bit about how it was for you? How did she turn up in your life? What were some shifts? How was it? Knowing as well is a little bit a while ago, but it's.
So yeah, sure, we can start there. That's fine. I would say that I didn't really do menopause very well, for starters. I didn't really understand that I was in it for a while. And when I look back now at some of the things I was going through, which was, it was kind of a very rocky period in my marriage. And I thought that was having an impact upon me and my feelings, my emotions. But now I think maybe it was or the fact that I was in menopause and that was impacting my marriage.
Oh.
Because, you know, I mean, for me, especially not, as I said a minute ago, not really getting that, oh, there's changes going on in my body. This is like getting your period or becoming pregnant or something like that, where the hormones are completely in flux, therefore impacting the emotions. I really didn't recognize the impact that it was having on me emotionally. And when I look back and think of sometimes my kids, you know, I might have been like completely undone, and my kids would, I hate to say this, but I remember them saying, "Mom, you're crazy," and I'd go, "I'm not crazy."
Yeah, I know that one.
Now I think, oh, they had a point. I get it now, because clearly I was probably not in my best, most centered self a lot of that time, right? So I can tell you what not to do in menopause, and I can tell you about life after menopause. We can certainly talk about that. But what I would like to talk about is what I've, through your approach me about having this conversation, I'd also like to share, which may be of use right now to women in menopause, are some new perspectives that it's given me retrospectively, as you said,
Super.
to how to understand on many levels what menopause is, how to flow, how to lean into that, or at least yield to that, and to be, if not nourished by it in real time, at least being able to navigate it with a different mindset. So on that, what I realize is that menopause, well, I just mentioned getting our periods. I mentioned pregnancy, becoming pregnant, and then menopause, all of which mark huge hormonal shifts. They also mark evolutionary moments in our lives. So if we look upon menopause as another major evolutionary moment in our lives, maybe we have re-entered yet another chrysalis that we go through periodically. And life in the chrysalis is probably not easy. You know, it's dark, it's there's compression, just like when you're a babe in the womb, things like that. All of which, by the way, fuel the development and growth of the fetus or the larva or whatever. If we look upon it as that and understand that we are in another highly emergent moment, a moment of evolution and then emergence, that we can anticipate, look with a bit of wonder and a bit of happy anticipation about what is coming after this. What happens when all my energy that has been going into all the biological processes that create periods, and then sloughing off the periods, and then begins the next cycle of the month and creating more lining of the uterus, and then, you know, sloughing it off when there's no egg conceived and all. What happens when all that energy gets returned to me because I'm through with those cycles that I've been having from age 12 or 13 to whenever menopause begins? I don't remember, mid-40s or something now, I think it was Margaret Mead who said, "There's no greater force than a postmenopausal woman." Are you aware of that quote?
She's quite old, right? She's
Yes.
yeah, definitely. I know of that. Yeah.
And
I
she
agree. I agree. I get that.
yes, and I can attest to that personally. And she has, I don't know if she's still alive actually, but she's been a very, very powerful thinker and leader and prolific writer and researcher. But so what if this menopause that I'm in right now is about a new another butterfly in a chrysalis, and I'm going to shed that old caterpillar, say, when I emerge, all of that beautiful energy that created, you know, that I used all these years so that I could produce babies, really, and keep the species going. what are my new babies I'm going to produce that don't have to be housed in my womb, but they can be housed in my mind and in my spirit, right? And that we can take these, not just in the walls of our home, but out into the world. I mean, what a force. I don't like to say an army, but what's a less military analogy? I mean, what a wonderful array of women leaders and energy of women now to take into the whole. We've certainly gifted it to our families and our homes for millennia. But now, because this is the other point I want to make, because our lives are so much longer, does menopause even mark the beginning of the second half of life anymore? Or is it the beginning of the second half, a second more than half? Because many of us will live well into our 90s. And I think the predictions for living to 120 are not that far off from what I've been reading. So we could be launching ourselves into the next 2/3 of our lives. The little girls watching this podcast now will be. You know, God willing, the planet is here and we're all in a new consciousness. There'll be a lot more life postmenopausal than premenopausal.
Yeah, and
So,
it's a long period as well, because you get, like you said, your period around 13, 14, and then you get a good 35, 40 years of fertility. And then
yes,
it's the equivalent of this afterwards.
right.
You're like extending it even more, which is, yeah,
It,
quite
it,
possible.
well, it's probable. It's actually medically predictable right now. And it's partly a function of, you know, that we take better care of ourselves and, you know, eat better, but it's also I think just that biomedically and having as medicine a couple of things as it advances, and I believe that it's going to become a much more subtle art practice of medicine, and things like cutting open the body and all that will be looked at as barbaric in time, except under dire circumstances things will be done through vibration and energy, and medicine is moving into an energetic realm and a vibrational realm. So because of those things too, we are going to learn how to take care of ourselves in the medical professional sense much more in a much more refined way and also customized way than we practice now, sort of one size fits all medicine. But I guess I'm digressing.
Yeah, no, but as I hear you speak, I have this question. Would you, because there is this trend to say, okay, because of the hormones, that the reproductive hormones plus testosterone that are coming to a halt, there is this trend to say, okay, well, to prolongate it, or would you want to have your cycle for a longer period of time? Because sometimes if you want to be fertile, that's one thing, right? Because there are some women that want to conceive. That's a real thing, and I totally get it. But would you? It's a question. Yeah. Would you?
No.
Yeah. No, I mean, I share this, unless, for me, I think it's only the fertility thing, that unless you've been trying to conceive, that a woman, I don't see how, but some women see that because of the aging, because of the, yeah, there is the body starts putting itself in a new mode, yeah, which is not a bad mode, but is just different. Yeah.
And you know, I would not be at all surprised if ways are not developed or discovered that we can, I mean, longevity medicine right now is huge. It's just a burgeoning part of the medical world. So we will be finding other ways to extend our longevity, I think, without having to extend our periods, and other ways of either taking care of ourselves or other doing what I call trying to age gracefully, which means getting used to it and living with it. because, or who knows what, but I just think that we don't know yet all of the possibilities for prolonging life, and what we think does it now, or what we think hormonally. I mean, I don't want to keep having my period. I also don't want to have more testosterone or all of these other things. So yeah, I think that there are more innovations to come.
Let's go back to what you said about the chrysalis, because this is something, I've done the Codex, and the second code is called Do Resonance. It's exactly about what you just mentioned, because that's the way that it's about tuning in. To me, menopause is like tuning in to your own frequency signal. And it's the big master tuning that Tagore was talking about, like the violin, that you get stretched and you get, then so that you can play your music.
Beautiful.
So there's all this tension. And what you mentioned about the chrysalis, yes, it's the larva and it's the chaos before a higher order can take place.
Yeah,
It's stepping into the real power, because all this energy that you were saying that is no longer used by the body to go up and down every month, like
right.
It's you embody, it's creativity more embodied, is more I don't know, I'm asking, like, you are a beautiful elder that can tell me if this resonates with you, because I'm a lot younger, but it's beautiful. And then the things that you were saying, there are, in the chrysalis, is the same. The architecture, the structure, biological structure of the what is it, the worm is not the same as the one of the butterfly, but it's all in the same system. And before we go out to birth new projects or new ways of being or whatever we want to birth, there is a rebirth of ourselves, and there's a shedding, there is a lot of all these things. You mentioned that you were going through difficult times. Tell us a little bit more about how was it like in your relationships, in your family, in your work. Were you talking about it, because it's different times as well, and now let's talk about it a bit more and give it
no, the answer is no. And I don't know if that's because it was talked about. It probably was talked about less then than it is now. There were some people, some women authors, female doctors, like there was a book called Our Bodies, Ourselves. These are things from the 60s and 70s where women were not just about menopause, but sort of shining a light on women for a change. And so some were talking about it, but it wasn't in the common conversation as much as today. I don't know if that's why I did it so poorly. I also did not. I think if at that point in my life, I was completely anti any allopathic medicine. So hormone replacement therapy, I absolutely was not interested. Retrospectively, maybe I should have explored it a little, or could have explored it a little. And maybe it would have brought a bit more balance to me. I don't know. I think that's another one size does not fit all thing. I think it's really important to all the women out there right now today, if you're going to explore that, get lots of input. Don't only see MDs, see naturopaths, see maybe an OBGYN who's a woman, see maybe a homeopath, maybe an Ayurvedic practitioner, whatever. But because there's a lot of ways to go about this. There's Chinese medicine has many good herbs that I would also say are well worth looking into. I may have taken some back then for a while. I was never a very good patient either in terms of compliance. So even if it was a nice alternative. I probably wasn't consistent with it, you know, and that sort of thing. This, this is a very honest life review, actually.
It's good, it's good. I love it.
So don't make those mistakes, anybody who's listening, but do explore various various ways, and talk to your, if you're in a situation, if you have a partner or if you have children, talk to everybody, get everyone in on the conversation. Like, mommy's going through some wonderful changes, and she's, you know, I don't know how you want to frame the conversation, but maybe to sort of set expectations for the people in your inner circle. And that even could be coworkers. It depends on your work situation, how close you all are, and on a personal level, but certainly in your homes. Yeah, maybe it should be family pause or something. You know, maybe it's something that everybody can be conscious of, and everybody can think about how we can eat best for it and exercise best and all these things. Because going through it alone, which I did, and at the time in my marriage, so I was married to a husband who traveled extensively, probably happily at the time, I would say. I think a lot of, I've actually since learned that some husbands would schedule their business trips while their wives were ovulating, things like that, because it was just easier, or when they were having their periods. But and also my husband was not, he was not quite a modern man in many ways. He grew up in the old country in Greece, and these just weren't conversations that we had. And so, and I'm not trying to put any of it on him, but it just wasn't a topic. It wasn't a shared thing at all, like it is today. So I encourage the sharing of it.
Yeah,
that's a really important thing. And when you share, invite and listen to what's going on for the other people around you, and then solution find together, you know, brainstorm together. And maybe it is about, you know, having outlets for people. If you as a woman are in a particularly volatile moment, maybe it's a time when the kids can go off and do something. I don't know. I'm just brainstorming off the top of my head, but the message is, make it a family thing. There's no reason. It's wonderful we have each other as women now, like we did in the olden tribal days, right? But our families are also our tribes, and it's good for everybody.
It is, because it's like when you have your period and everybody knows something is up.
Uh-huh.
Right, when those periods where, you know, you're like, oh, you know,
Yeah.
it's so heavy, and like going, oh, everybody knows this, and even you're a walking field that is, you know, like, and you feel it, but those around you feel it, and even in your interactions. So it's a good thing. I mean, we are, you know, today, I think, especially, I think younger, even the millennials, you know, like, I think they're a lot more, I think maybe sometimes too much, talking about all these things. But what I want to say is, like, what I found I had to mark, because when I had my period, I didn't, my mom just, you know, it was
right
as well in Greece. And
so
it was just, I had zero information, zero. It was just like, and so since then I've worked on it and I've looked at a lot of things. But when I realized that I was into perimenopause or menopause, I thought, okay, I need to mark it. And my desire was to share it with close friends and my family and my children. You know, I had to, and I did a little ceremony my way. You know, you can do something, you can do it however you like. You can just do a dinner and say and call it, you know, like, well, you know, it's it's something that lasts a few years. You cannot just pretend, you know, for a few years nothing is up, and it's a big change. So for sure.
listening to you, Anna, I'm really grateful in a way that your experience with getting your period was as it was, as you described it, where it was not talked about on your mother. It was because that propelled you into your own inquiry and into birthing this whole codex, menopause codex, wonderful concept and thing that you've developed that now you're taking out into the world. And really, had you not had to kind of fend for yourself and grapple with it and had your own curiosity and perseverance to understand and to explore and to investigate and research and now develop this, we'd all be the less for it, because I think it's a wonderful contribution.
Well, thank you.
And I think it's going to resonate widely. I mean, how can it not? It's absolutely true for every one of us, what you're talking about.
There is something that's there. I love what you're saying, and I think there is a place for it, because I do go a little bit below the first symptoms and all the fuss and everything that is going on, because I talk more about the process and the different ways that we are cooking in it, and we're like in a I kind of have a relationship with menopause these days, where she's like, I call her a she, and like this force of nature, and she's like unearth things, and so it's a different perspective. It's a different relationship rather than fear her, because it is a force of nature in us. It's the nature that, hey, I don't even know what it is that sets now is the beginning of the end of your cycle, like the process.
Yeah.
Interesting, huh?
Very.
It's like, what is it that, because all women go, and I mean, the average age is between 50 and 52. You can have it before, you can have it after. Where technically, when your period stops for a year, that's what technically you're
complete.
Yeah, like it's
I see.
The average age is 50 to 52. But every woman goes through this, every woman, and we cannot treat her like this terrible,
dreaded.
Dreaded and dangerous, and it's just the way we relate to it, and the way we there is this word in French, apprivoiser, like the little prince with his, in the book, the little prince. With the rose that you have there, that he would go and he had this rose on his planet, and he would go and create, but the rose was very like, don't touch it. He would go and tame.
What is the word in French?
Apprivoiser. Apprivoiser. And it's like this means that it's something that's wild, it's a force of nature. You need to
beautiful.
That's how I see the relationship, because there are moments where there's things happening and you cannot really if you go against it, I think it's not a good, you're go against your own self.
Exactly.
Basically.
And what you just made me realize is, in this taming, how did the little prince tame the rose? He developed a relationship with it.
Yeah.
What you're talking about. You even have you reference your menopause as her. And yes, that's wonderful. So it's embracing rather than fearing. It's welcoming. Yeah.
The relating is from a different place. It's more of it's more the fearing is a lot in the head and in the narratives, and there is a lot that has been, women are bombarded for various reasons. But embracing is a very feminine energy. We know it intuitively. We just need to tune into it, right?
It's heart-based as opposed to the head, that you just said.
And womb-based, because it's actually your womb. That's
even more.
All this connects, like from
my gosh.
everything, how you connect to, I think, I don't know, tell me about your experience. How did you have what new ways, something that, what things you had to let go of, and then you went in the kind of new direction around that time? Were there moments like this, or?
So, well, I will answer that in a second, but I want to get back to your point when you're talking about, womb-based, heart-based, and mental, because those are like in Chinese medicine, there are these energy centers that are called dantians, right?
Yeah.
So the upper dantian, the middle dantian, and the lower dantian.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. And maybe there's something about from the lower and the upper and synthesizing in the middle, the energy. I don't know, but you really named three very important components to this process and to navigating the process. So what you asked me what
And what you describe is the kind of alchemy that does take place in our own bodies, in our body, not just the physicality, right? We have our physical, our emotional, our mental, our spiritual body, and this is, we are it's our vehicle, right? And it gets reset, it gets right.
It is a huge reset. It's yeah, maybe it's a pre and post reset. Maybe we reset it, then we go through the emergent being, and then then we get to the higher order that you quoted. You quoted Ilya Prigozhin before from yeah, exactly right. Start from the chaos to a higher order, the breakthrough. Gosh, the alchemy of it, I don't know. I can't. I hope I'm not disappointing when I just don't have any really pithy things to tell you about my experience. Mine is really, my contribution is really retro reflective because, as I said, I don't think I went through it very consciously. And there were prices to pay for that. This is something that I could share that might be food for thought because I was, as I told you earlier, I was like, no, I'm not crazy. I was totally disconnected. I won't even say I was in denial because I don't think I even was connected to the fact that my body was transitioning. So I don't think that's quite the same as being in denial. In denial is to kind of know something and not want to look at it. But because today you guys are much more cognizant of this, you can make choices. That's the whole thing of development, of growth, is to be able to know that we have choice points, and we have a choice point at every single second. And even in the throes of an emotional swing, we don't, when we're cognizant of it, and by that I mean when we can sort of be a slight observer, step just enough outside of ourselves to say, oh, there she goes, I see Eve taking off now. And to have the will to make a different choice at that point, because there were times when I did see myself in swings, maybe they were during my menopausal period, actually. But I didn't exercise, I saw myself doing it, but I didn't exercise the will at that moment to pull back, to stop, to make a different choice. So rather I gave into it. And I think, as I said, there.
Sorry. Oh. Yeah. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's
fine. Okay. I'll switch that off.
Okay. So should I
you were saying about, I have a couple of things to say on this. I would not feel bad about it, because I think that what you describe is a very common experience even today, and I don't think it's that widely accepted, or like I said, there is a lot as well of I would say focus on the symptoms only rather than the source, what is going on in the background.
Yes.
So I would not feel bad about it, because that we're very good as women to beat ourselves up.
Doing that, yeah, right.
Even in retrospective.
Yes.
No, I think not. I don't think that's the way to go.
Good point.
Is and it, you know, like I don't think it's ever too late. And even if you realize this now, you know, it's good. It does something to our psyche, to our system, because it's
Yes.
and I don't think it's a bad thing. It's what you could have done at the time, with the resources you had, with what you knew, with the culture and the environment around you, right? So it's not,
Absolutely.
and it's the
Yeah.
same for a lot of women even today. It doesn't mean that you can. The reason why I'm doing this is to have many different examples of stories of women, because
Yes.
that's what we're missing. I think
Yeah.
we're missing the transmission, the
Bravo.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly
And
right.
and yeah, and with this, I wanted to. It's something that I read something somewhere about you, about your podcast that you did during
Yeah.
the COVID,
Yeah.
and I wanted to talk about that, because you were talking about um I don't know, remember you tell us about it, because it
Sure.
was, what I liked was that you were talking to younger people, millennials,
Right.
and you had
Right.
like people from older
Right.
generations. And there's this intergenerational
Yeah.
conversation
Yeah.
was so valuable for both sides. And so tell us a bit about the podcast you did during COVID, right? This was
Right. It began, yeah, because when COVID struck and everything was called to a halt, I was very curious about how the young people, the millennials who are just burgeoning with energy and life force and wanting to get out there in the world, how that would affect them, like all of a sudden, is there just a big halt to their lives? So I got together a couple friends, and the three of us created what we called the up levels. Um, it's still online, I think, theuplevels.com or something. And we had conversations between um, boomers and millennials.
that's so
And
beautiful.
it was so wonderful, so much fun. And you're right. So we, the three older folks, loved it. But all of the younger people were, let's do this again. And can we have another interview? And I realized, per what you said a moment ago, that transmission
Yeah.
is missing. And for most of us and I won't even say in America, because a lot of our kids were in Europe that we interviewed. So in the Western world, in the industrialized and now information societies that are out there, I mean, I suppose India's an information society, in China too, but still in the more developed socioeconomic societies, that transmission is lost. People are away from their, families they grew up with, extended families, all that. So there's a real place for this now. And
It's
fortunately, we can,
missing, huh? It's really
yeah,
missing.
it's
And
missing
it's needed by both sides. I mean,
by both
I
sides.
think it's you know what, menopause in Asia, or maybe you know about it in Japan or in China, is called the second spring, and then it's a
Oh,
different,
yes.
but it is the women when they enter,
Uh-huh.
they are more revered as elders, and
Right.
so it's like you arrive somewhere and um, you are received, and
Yes.
and
Yes.
the second half, so and you're more accepted and more, you have more of I guess status as well in the society as a woman compared to before. But there are other things in Asian cultures that are way different, but this is beautiful. And in the West, like you said, it's like all over the place, and there's
Yeah.
youth culture as well, but it's not, I think it's artificial. I think both the younger generations and the older generations, they want this, they want
Yes.
these conversations,
Yeah.
and there's a lot to learn. from both sides, actually.
Absolutely. And there was a lot of joy to be had. We all had fun doing it. It was like we loved both the younger and the older. We're so happy at the end of every podcast. They were just joyous. I mean, really, I guess maybe part of it was that both people at both ends of the age spectrum were seen. The young people were seen by us, and we were seen too by them. And that had a great deal of meaning and joy in it for both sides. And we learned a lot. These kids were so smart and doing such amazing
Yeah,
things.
they're getting faster, but they do need these connections with the elders, because
right.
they are, yes, they are new models, I call them, but there is some links that need to be made with the older models.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and just having this sort of stabilizing force of an elder, I kind of still say, I just thought of a book title a second ago while we're talking, and the title was going to be, I guess I'm an elder, ... Who knew? Because
Brilliant. Yeah.
Because this is how I feel, even when you sent me something about talking to something about me being a beloved elder at 75. I read it and I was like, what? Like, who's that? Because when you see it in print, you go 75. Oh my God, I used to think that was really old. And when you're in the body of that person and living your life, it no longer kind of has meaning in the way it does when I look at it and I remember what that used to mean to me when I would see that. So anyway.
Yes, and that's an example that I love what you're saying. This is something that you're such an example to say this at 75, and you look amazing. It's a delight to converse with you, and I love your curiosity. And when you were going on about, you called it the curiosity generation or something, right?
Oh, yes, yeah.
Tell me about this. Is so beautiful because there's the boomers, the X generation, the Y, the Zs, and now the alphas and the betas, and all that. But what is the curiosity generation?
So
I want to kind of wrap it up with this, and then a little bit about your new book. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. One of the two people that I brought that we gathered for this is my dear friend now. I hadn't met him before, but Jeffrey Nelson, who's a super creative, who had spent his career in Hollywood and is a brand genius, everything like that. And he developed that phrase, the curiosity generation, because it's the only generation, or the first generation not defined by age.
Yeah.
And we all belong to it. That's what we found out in the podcast. The younger people did. We were all part of the curiosity generation. And maybe that's a key right there, is staying curious.
I love that.
Yeah.
And you were talking about willingness as well earlier on, that maybe you were not willing. My call to women today in menopause is to just be curious.
Yes.
Curious, curiosity even about the process and everything, about what's going on with you, and willing to learn from it, willing to be opened up.
Yeah, I think you're creating a context for that to happen too, because you're removing, as you said earlier, menopause from this dreaded, oh my God, no menopause, and maybe the narrative behind it, which means then I'm going to be, not fertile, not sexy, not whatever women old. Yeah, right. So all of these things that are part of an inherited narrative, who made it up, we don't need to take it on. But that helps then one be curious and be willing.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
You're giving the opportunity to be curious, but you're also letting us, or the younger women now, go into it almost with some, like the curiosity could be kind of exciting. Like, what is on the other side of this? And who will I emerge as? Who do I choose to emerge as on the other side of this? So I just really applaud you so much for this work and, you know, defining it and writing about it and creating something that women can latch onto and sort of track their growth and their progress through in it. Everything, Joanna, I think you're
Thank
a
you.
leader, a spearheader. Yeah, you're welcome.
And I applaud you because you're such a what is it? You know, when I was younger, people asked me, "Who's your role model?" I'd never had any, you know. But you are one of those. When I was thinking that, like I told you, of elder women that I wanted to interview, you came up, and I thought, oh, you know, I have
Wow.
to talk to her because you are embodying it, you know, and your curiosity, your spirit, the fact that you did during COVID,
Yeah.
the podcast with the youngsters, you know, like, and talking about the curiosity generation. This is
Yeah.
fabulous stuff. I mean, you
Yeah.
just,
Thank you. Yeah, it's
yeah.
I really look at my own life in retrospect like that. So this has been really good for me too. I would like to say just a bit about the VQ,
Please
if I may.
do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because because it's good for me to keep this out there in front of myself, because this is a book that's been wanting to be written for 20 years. And so I've tons of files of things, but the book is about vibrational intelligence. And this is what I call the meta intelligence that encompasses our IQ, sort of our raw intelligence, definitely our EQ, our emotional intelligence. And people talk about spiritual intelligence and bodily, lots of, since emotional intelligence developed, there have been a lot of tags for other kinds of intelligence. But this piece, the vibrational, really is it's embedded, it's grounded in the fact that we are vibrational beings. That this is only as solid as we think, but if you dive down into the quantum level, we're really mostly space, vibrating space, as is this whole universe that we live in.
Yeah.
So when we really start understanding ourselves as vibrational beings, and that we are, one way of saying is that we are condensates of energy into something that looks solid, living in an energy soup of the whole universe, the quantum field. When we understand that, there's, I think, infinite levels of potentials that we haven't even tapped or understood. And this is what I want to and am writing about, is how do we understand that? How do we ground ourselves in that? How do we start utilizing that? And then, what can become of that? What can happen to ourselves? What can happen to society? What can happen beyond that, to all of humanity and beyond? And so that's what this book is going to be about. VQ, vibrational intelligence.
It's
So,
beautiful.
thank you.
Okay. Wow.
And by the way,
Yeah.
medicine and physics are going to be the two roads that lead us there the fastest, to understanding our vibrational nature.
Yeah. And yeah, there is a lot to do, yeah, with the vibrational and the resonance.
Yes.
Resonance is a huge thing, and
Exactly.
it's like is your vibrational like you, but what happens when you synchronize with others?
Yeah.
Levels of creativity that they multiply, right? Is within and is with others, you know, is practice.
Exactly.
It's magnificent. I love it.
You're there. You're already there. Thanks.
I love this stuff. Can't wait to read your book. So
Yeah.
beautiful. Is there something you would like to say about menopause, or something to younger women before we go?
Thanks, Joanna. I will just say that I just, want to send love and blessings to each one of you who are on this journey right now, and that you embrace it as an ally and a friend, and see yourselves as this expression of the divine feminine going through yet another metamorphosis to bring your greatest self to the world, to yourself, to your family, and to the world.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Joanna, just A pleasure.
A delight. Thank you very much.
Yeah. See you.
Bye bye.
Enchanté.